So all eyes are on Nvidia and Nvidia earnings, and it feels like every time Nvidia reports earnings, the whole market is on edge and waiting for confirmation that there is still AI spending. And no matter how many times Nvidia gives that confirmation, the feeling remains close to earnings. The market is on pins and needles. And then we also had an interesting testimony today from IonQ CEO Damasi. I'll give my thoughts on that a little bit. We saw BTQ Technologies explode up, I believe it was 25%, and also Ondas 25%. So we're seeing some rejuvenation in growth stocks that is promising. And we're going to kind of talk about that, and maybe we found somewhat of a bottom for the time being, but we'll have to take a look and see the price action and the longer duration on the chart. So we're going to look at quantum stocks today. We're also going to look at Ondas as well, as it had a nice performing day. And we're going to get in and out of here as efficiently as possible. So let's take a look at the news and what is going on in the markets. First, let's start with the watch list. So as we can see in the quantum market, as everyone knows, quantum has been a very volatile trade, and there's been a lot of selling lately. In fact, for the last month, it's felt like all we've seen is just sell, sell, sell. But we actually saw some strength and optimism in a number of quantum tickers today. And of course, this is all with a big asterisk that a lot of these have fallen already. However, the aggressive in the buying of BTQ is pretty impressive there, 25% almost. QUBT, I learned a little bit about QUBT, and I might make another video on that, but I actually bought a healthy amount of QUBT today. I think I didn't understand the company, and I need to start focusing on what they're trying to do and less on how they're communicating what they're doing. And I'm going to flip over to this. China's new photonic quantum chip promises 1,000-fold gains for complex computing tasks. So China is building this photonic quantum chip, which is reported to accelerate complex calculations by more than 1,000-fold. And what they're doing is they're using thin film lithium niobate, and they're building it in like one chip architecture. So apparently there is a deployability and claims of 1,000-fold gains over leading GPUs. So then I went and looked, and I'm like, what is the closest company to what China's doing here? And lo and behold, it was Quantum Computing Inc., who's also using thin film lithium niobate. And I didn't know this, but Quantum Computing Inc. also has a random number, quantum random, which is it's hard to do classically, but with quantum properties, quantum random is an actual random, and it makes me wonder how they say that Quantum Computing Inc., right? They've said that they have this top 5 national bank, and I'm wondering how they're using Quantum Computer Inc.'s. I got very interested and intrigued, and I decided to buy a bunch of shares because I don't want my own sort of cynicism to blind me to maybe what QCI is trying to do. And we saw Quantum Emotion has been taking some big hits. We'll take a look at in its trading range. It's traded between $3.68 and now it's at $1.87. So it's been cut in half, and Rigetti has also been cut in half from its all-time highs. IonQ, with their testimony of their CEO today, $49.12. And we see some buying. And then Skywater is looking very nice at this price at $15.71. And we see some selling as well. Inflection CCCX not doing the best at this point in time, but looks like a very nice entry point. And then taking a look at this other watch list as well, Ondas almost reached $8 today. I think it did during the day. We'll look at the chart. Honest is a stock I've been adding to a lot. It just has a good, solid foundation. They make good money. I like the leadership and I like the balance sheet, and it just seems like a very good price at this point in time. I was adding to the stock when it was a $4 stock, and it's fallen from there. So a lot of growth stocks you're seeing actually kind of had a little bit of buying today, which was nice to see. Big Bear was up 7%. Airship was up 8%. I got asked on StockTwits if I was still in Airship. I am in Airship. Resolve has taken an absolute beating since its earnings. Red Cat is, all of these growth stocks have been absolutely pummeled. Unfortunately, our dear friend Plug announced some dilution after hours and is down mightily. So if we look at the post market, Plug is sadly down at $1.67, which is about my entry. So we'll just have to wait for that one to play out. And of course, we talked about this at the top of the video that Nvidia is to report their high stakes Q3 earnings amid investor concerns about an AI bubble. And my thoughts on this are that we are in a tech revolution, and that revolution includes quantum AI, drone, quantum sensing. It includes all types of different AI and AI application layers and all types of different computing. So even beyond quantum computing, there's different types of computing, like biological computing. We're just in this sort of phase of rapid technological progression. And I think that Nvidia is best positioned at this moment in time to capitalize on the huge push worldwide, not just in the US, for more AI and more data centers and more chips. So I think Nvidia is going to be fine. And just looking at the market has been selling off. I mean, Amazon is down 4.5%, Microsoft down 3%. The market has been absolutely brutal lately. Let's look at the fear and greed. The fear, when I looked earlier, was at 9, like 4 points above where it was during March and April. And I just kind of had to laugh. I can't believe that it's gotten to this point, because I just don't see the justification. Earnings have been good. There's speculation that we're always in some bubble, or always that some market crash is near. But I think one thing is very true about this year is a lot of the market makers and money managers missed the big run from March and April, and they've missed their numbers. So it's in their best interest to drive down the prices of these stocks before they go into their next rally. So it all feels very manufactured and manipulated to me. And you get retail investors that get interested in the stock market, and then everyone gets fearful. Fear is the flavor of the week. And then suddenly, just like that, boom, 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 the stock market is back to greed and extreme greed before you know it. And if you weren't positioned, if you weren't buying stocks when we're in extreme fear, then you miss some of the best gains. And I have been aggressively positioning myself. I've been buying a lot of quantum. I've bought CHAC, so I've bought a lot of Xanadu on this dip. I don't think Xanadu's even had its run yet, and I'm going to make a completely separate video about Xanadu and their ties to AMD. Also, CCCX Inflection. We're going to talk to Matt, the CEO, here on the channel, hopefully sometime next week. And I've listened to a few of his interviews, and he is super sharp. So looking forward to hearing about that. But the market right now, the backdrop remains kind of in this scared state that everyone's afraid. I'm not sure what they're afraid of, maybe the boogeyman, but let's talk about this briefing the U.S. Congress had on AI and quantum tech, this Joint Economic Committee. So I'm going to just be very frank here. So I listened to this in my earphones, and I listened to Damasi's opening remarks, and I'm going to paraphrase this to the best of my ability. But essentially what Damasi says is, when asked, what's China doing with quantum? And are we like where are we with quantum technology, and should we be worried? And his answer was, IonQ is the best company. We've been around for 30 years. Everyone else is copying us. No one else is even close to us. We're 5 years ahead. And then when he was pressed, he, uh, when he's pressed on the China piece, then he said something to the effect of that China was stealing the intellectual property of IonQ, and he could use the help from the US government to stop that type of thing. And I just thought that really fell flat for me. I don't think so. I don't think that going to the US government and saying, yeah, we've got it all taken care of. Demasi kind of treated it like an earnings call or a sales pitch. And really, what this was is a gut check, a reality check of where quantum is in the world and where the competition is. And China only discloses what China wants to disclose. There's some theories that they only disclose benchmarks when similar benchmarks have been released in the Western media. So it's a very dangerous assumption that Demasi is making that they're 5 years ahead of China. I would actually call BS on that. That IonQ, the leadership of IonQ and the PR team of IonQ, like, it is in the best interest for the United States and our allies to be on the same page about quantum, and that is that we just don't know what we don't know. We don't know what China's doing, how far along they are. We know that they're ahead in quantum networking. You look at the MIT Quantum Index report, and I was disappointed. I think that also there's too much of the I'm just better than you. Our solutions are better. You guys all suck. You guys all are copycats, and this negativity and this sense of kind of like this air of superiority that, quantum isn't magic. Quantum is hard. Okay. And anyone who's in this field or any of the people that I've talked to, they're going to agree that it's a very hard thing. So instead of embracing that we're trying to develop a very difficult to work with, a difficult to manipulate technology, why create the infighting? Like, what does it solve? And also going to the US government and having this prime audience and prime opportunity to say, we're a little bit worried. We're not sure. That, I think it's okay if IonQ says, we're not sure. That's okay. It's okay to admit you don't know what you don't know. And I think that this was a big miss in my book. And I was disappointed with that. It looks like the industry and the sector of quantum is fractured. And it looks like there's too much jockeying. And the efforts should be more unified. And there should be a clear message, especially to legislators, that more funding needs to happen. And I did not get that impression at all. Now, IonQ's raised $3 billion. So why does IonQ need more funding? Well, they're only thinking about themselves. But the progress of the whole sector, the progress of quantum, the progress of our legislation, and our national safety and security, and should be a priority, and IonQ should have those interests in mind. That is the most patriotic thing that they could do. And I'm disappointed covering this space. I would have, as an IonQ investor and as someone who covers this space pretty frequently, I feel like the actual state of quantum was misrepresented to the Joint Economic Committee. It felt like a sales pitch for IonQ. It felt like an earnings call speaking to investors. This is not an earnings call. It is an issue of national security, and it was not treated with the gravitas that it should have been treated with. So that is my opinion on what happened. And on that note, we had quantum computing stocks there's a China commission that is recommending more U.S. funding. So a U.S.-China Security Economic Commission annual report to Congress on Tuesday warned of China's quantum technology push and recommended significant funding of U.S. initiatives. Quantum computing stocks, though, fell as artificial intelligence infrastructure plays again retreated. So essentially, there was this report here. The U.S. China Security and Economic Commission recommended Congress establish a quantum first by 2030 national goal and provide significant funding for U.S. quantum development, establish a quantum software engineering institute. And they say here, China's industrial policy and party state control have also positioned it to attain first mover advantage in technologies of the future, like synthetic biology, quantum technologies, and automation. Whoever leads in the quantum and artificial intelligence race will control the encryption of the digital economy, enable breakthroughs in materials, energy, and medicine, and gain asymmetric and likely persistent advantage in intelligence and targeting. It is imperative that the U.S. treat quantum not as a research silo, but as a mission-critical national capability and act accordingly. So you don't have to take my word for it. You can take the word of the U.S. China Security and Economic Commission's word for it. They're saying the same thing, and this is what IonQ and Damasi should have been saying, and not just talking about his company. I just felt like it was very short-sighted, especially in light of where we are in the bigger picture of this quantum race. So the Federal Commission, of course, is urging Congress to adopt a quantum first, and the panel warns that China's state-supported quantum programs pose growing strategic risks and that early U.S. action is needed to prevent long-term disadvantage. So I want to go into what long-term disadvantage actually means, because I don't think people understand this, and I would venture maybe that Damasi himself doesn't understand this. If we lose to China with quantum computing, then our tech companies in the United States, the backbone of our economy, will rapidly lose value. And I don't mean to say this to be hyperbolic or anything like that. It's just a simple fact. We have an RSA encryption layer that protects everything, and all of these big companies rely on that. So if suddenly that layer is pulled back because China has, or another nation state has a sufficiently powerful quantum computer, then suddenly all bets are off, and we have to re-rate all tech companies. And the tech companies that were prepared for Q Day will have more value, and the ones that weren't will suffer mightily. But that could be a massive black swan event for the US stock market. So it's not just a matter of national security, it's also the backbone of the United States equity market is tech. And you want to ignore something like this, and you keep getting these warnings, and you keep getting these warnings. I think it's the job of these CEOs to tell that story. And I did not get that story when Damasi went to the, what was it? Joint Economic Committee today. Okay, so enough ranting. There's a lot going on. Let's talk about BTQ, which is a post-quantum cybersecurity company. So really quickly, they had this press release today. They launched a Q-Perfect division, launched a GPU accelerated Q Leo with Nvidia Q2Q compatibility and partnership with Qobli. So this is a GPU accelerated Q Leo launch, bridging quantum and classical systems and driving industrialization. BTQ has been absolutely hammered. It hasn't been on the stock market for too long. As we can see, it had its debut in September. It blasted up to about $16 a share and then is sold off. And of course, it's sold down with a lot of other high beta names. And we can see today that it printed a very beautiful candle. Let me pull up. So this really nice candle here kind of reminds me of this candle here. They're some of their early breakouts in the aggressive buying that we saw in BTQ. So what can we expect from BTQ? Well, I think there's some interesting levels at play. So we closed and in post, we're at 750. I'm going to draw a gray line here. And I think there's a few zones. So first we have this zone. So we're going to need to get above the key psychological level of 10 and hold above it. And I actually thought BTQ was going to hold it once it got up here. And it did for a couple of weeks to my credit, but then it fell and then it fell and it fell and it fell. So you basically got BTQ, if you were buying in the last couple of days, at its NASDAQ listing price, which is amazing. If this company ends up being anything in this space, what a great entry so many people got. And so I see basically zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and zone 4 here. And this is a high flying stock, so I could see it being volatile, maybe rejecting off 10, coming back down to 7. It could flush down again if Nvidia misses on earnings, or if we have more indications that we're not getting a rate cut. High beta stocks could keep getting the smackdown. But for the time being, it's presenting bullish, especially the fact that it's up in post. So we'll see if the rally can continue on BTQ. Let's take a look at IonQ. So IonQ stock has been all over the place this year. Most recently, it actually dumped down to below Analyst Day. So this God candle over here was the Analyst Day candle. And you can see that blue line and where it's sitting, and we're trading right above Analyst Day. So we had in the interim, we had 99.99% 2 qubit gate fidelity. Okay, somewhere around here. We had the explosion up as we had the Nobel Prize awarded for quantum tunneling, and we had just multiple factors. So actually I actually made a mistake there. So this was the Analyst Day candle, and we're far below. So this was kind of the Analyst Day rally. We hit 84, and then we dropped all the way down to this $49, and we're hanging around this $49 area. But IonQ has a very aggressive roadmap, and we're going to find out very soon if Chris Ballance and the company can execute on its roadmap. And if they are going to execute on the roadmap the way they say, then I think that any dip is a buying opportunity. You can see that, and you have to ask yourself, what is going to be the value of a company like IonQ if they're able to actually take over the quantum market the way they seem to be wanting to. So we have IonQ in 2025 available for $18 a share. We had one dip down to 35 after a big rally, and our dip recently, and maybe recent bottom, is 42.80, and we're trading around 50 right now. So overall, we're holding an uptrend in IonQ. I was actively adding before their most recent earnings. They did have good revenue and earnings compared to previous quarter last year. So I like IonQ. Under 55, I think, is a buy. Rigetti. Let's take a look at Rigetti. So we're going to look at 4-hour candles, and this has been an absolutely brutal fall for Rigetti. Although it's had a couple of days where it seemed to be finding some support. So we're going to have to see what's going on and if it's possible that it could increase. So we've seen it be a $58 stock, and we see it sell down 56%. Ouch, 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 ouch. Now, for those who are long in the stock, this is short-term noise. For traders, if you were buying here or here or here, you're pretty sad because you're down a lot if you didn't get out of the trade. But we're kind of finding in the 4-hour candles, we're finding some support around $25. And this is interesting because we didn't really stop here on the way up. We actually stopped more at like this $28 to $34 level. So I do wonder if Rigetti can get back up and kind of hang out at least in that 28 to 34 level. That's if I was to bet, that's what I would imagine would happen if we get good Nvidia earnings and if our macro can flip. D-Wave. So D-Wave has a very similar chart to Rigetti. We have a lot of price history between 28 and 25. A little bit of price movement here, a couple bounces off that 25, and now we're trading under 25. So what I'd like to see D-Wave do is just recapture 25 and maybe just hang out, maybe get above 28.71. I don't need it to go up like it was going up when things were parabolic, but if it could hold some levels where there's price history and there's clearly buyers, that would be nice. All right, and Ondas had great earnings. I think they beat on the top and the bottom, and Ondas has been a wild ride. So of course, Gene brought Ondas to us way back here when this was a $2 chuck, and the stock went up just from that point 457%, and at the time of this recording 277%, and lots of volume coming in. Of course, a beat on the top and the bottom. And where's Ondas go from here? I mean, the question is simple. Are there going to be more or less drones in the future? Are militaries around the world going to want more or less drones in the future? To me, Ondas is perfectly positioned to capture the demand in the future for more drones. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys. I hope you really enjoyed this one. I didn't have a ton of time tonight, so I thought I would throw at least a screen recording here quickly together. Hope you're enjoying at least a little bit of green in some of these growth stocks, and leave your predictions in the comment below. Let me know if you think that this is going to continue, and we will see you guys in the next one.